to press record. And I'm actually not going to spend a lot of time introducing our presenters. That's not an indicator of their worth, but I know you're keen to use this time as actively as possible. But just to let you know the format. So we've got 3 people, thank you, who are willing just to share what their experience has been of menopause awareness in the workplace. So we've got Penny Spalding from Queensland Teachers Union. We've got Kim Lyon, and I think Scott's here as well, Scott Laird from IPG Media Brands. And we've also got Julie Stafford from the University of Canterbury in New Zealand. And they're all at varying degrees of maturity, I might like to say, in terms of actually implementing something in the workplace. And we're all here not because we're doing things perfectly, but we're actually at least giving it a go. So there's lots to learn and share. So they're going to speak for about 8 to 10 minutes each, which will bring us up to about 12:30. Then I'll allow about 10 minutes of Q&A if you've got some burning questions for our presenters. Then I'm going to get you to reflect a bit on, like, where are you at in the workplace? What's your next step? And then for you to define a problem or a question that you'd like to take into some breakout groups. And so you'll have about 15 minutes in your breakout groups, and then we'll come back and talk about any unresolved issues, if you like, or unresolved questions. I am allowing until 1:15 for today. So my aim is that when you do leave, that you've got some more ideas or feel better equipped to take the next step in your workplace. If you don't leave with that, get in touch with me afterwards, and I'm sure we can have a chat about that. So if we're all good about that, I'm first going to invite Penny Spalding, who's a Women's Officer from Queensland Teachers Union, just to tell us a little bit about what's been happening at QTU. And just to put this in context, I think there might be one person who might need to mute their microphone at this point. Yeah, thanks. Just to put this into context, to my knowledge, I think Victoria Women's Trust was the first organisation in Australia to create a menopause policy so that women could take some extra days leave if they needed to. But to my knowledge, I think QTU is the first organisation to take a really committed organisational approach to becoming menopause friendly. So not just equipping individuals or not just providing information, but actually looking at creating a culture where menopause is a normal and open conversation to have. So Penny, over to you. Can you just give us a little bit of an overview?
Yeah, thanks, Thea, and hello, everyone. I'm speaking with you from Cantebury country in Brisbane today, and it's a really bright, crisp autumnal day. And I'd like to also just acknowledge that Leah Olsen, the Vice President of the Union, is a participant in the workshop here today as well. We're really pleased to work with Thea around this project as an organisation with 48,000 members, 76% of which identify as women. It was really important for us. Is that my microphone, Thea, or is it?
You're good.
No, all good. Okay.
Yeah.
We're really keen to work with Thea and recognise a really common health issue that is, unfortunately, like a lot of issues impacting women, seen as taboo.
Hello, Norbert. How are you?
And we were really, as my experience of working with women in the union, and through organising and supporting people with workplace issues, it became really apparent that menopause was impacting women in the workplace. And there was this really negative connotation attached to it, which was really unhelpful. And people were being dismissed where they might have been having symptoms at work. They were seen as being problematic or too hard or dismissed in the old sort of sexist, hysterical sort of fashion. So we really wanted to, I guess, work on behalf of our members to find ways to be more positive and to help women in the workplace. So initially, we already had a relationship with Thea, and we'd done some work around World Menopause Day a few years ago. And a member of our executive had been part of the change process and fed back to the union what a positive experience that was. And I know from discussing with that woman, and I've got permission to share this, of course, it was so crucial to her physical health and her mental health, in completely reframing menopause as this negative thing that she'd been told all her life was something really bad, to reframing it as powerful. So we knew the course that Thea had arranged had made a real shift, and that there were ways we as an organisation could move forward. So as a workplace, the union is also, we have about 130 employees across the state. We have regional offices, but we have our main office based in Brisbane, and we have about 130 employees. And again, most of those people are women. So we thought, to become a trial workplace for the menopause pilot project, we could do a mini experience of our own, set up some structures, work with Thea around some structures, and I'll talk to what we did very shortly. But it was really important that we would then take those learnings of our own workplace and see what changes we could implement for our wider membership, for the workforce that are in schools and TAFE campuses throughout the state. So there were sort of two main priorities around how we as a union can be an employer of choice, to be, you know, best practice around working conditions and support our employees, but then how we could transfer our learnings and experiences for the benefits of our members as well. That was really important for us. So we sat down and worked out a bit of a strategy with Thea around what we could do. We started with a survey of all employees were invited to participate around garnering what their understandings of menopause and perimenopause to be, if they'd experienced it themselves and knew of other people, around perceptions, and how the workplace could assist them if they had. And that was really interesting, because there was some employees who were really excited about it, really keen to be involved, and we gathered a bit of a little subcommittee of people wanting to be part of it and steer. And then, of course, like all workplaces, there were people who really resisted it. And again, that perception that it might be something to performance manage or target menopausal women was seen as a factor by one or two people. And interestingly, for one participant, there was that, well, what are we doing about the blokes? This is about women's healthcare. How about the blokes in our workplace? And it came from a woman, not a man, which is also, you know, you can never predict these things. But of course, as we moved through the process and the program, we saw that the findings we had and the benefits of the workplace, I guess, the suggestions and the changes and the adjustments we could make wouldn't only benefit the women in the workplace, they would have a positive impact for the men who work for our organisation as well. So that survey was really important. We then implemented some training, and we had two levels of training that was targeted at all employees, and it was an opt-in. We obviously we wanted people to want to be there. We didn't want it to be anything that was forced or directed to people, because then we'd have a barrier to it. And that Thea conducted workshops with our employees around information and general information around health and well-being, and around what menopause and perimenopause was. And then we also delivered training that was specifically targeted at managers and how they could support the employees as well. And that was really well received. People were talking about it. There was great learnings. It was really important that managers who were male and leaders in our organisation actively participated in it as well, and gave it that lens of being for all genders, because it was really important to not be seen as only, while it primarily impacts women, but not only be seen as women's business. It was our whole organisation's business. So that was really important for us as well. So following that training, we just hitting our peak and getting our stride, and COVID happened. So like obviously for teachers, when COVID hit, we were dealing with remote schooling, learning. So the project did take a little bit of a hiatus or a pause while everyone was working at home. And then this year we're regrouping and regenerating the program again. We were able to develop resources for our employees, a series of tip sheets and guides for managers, you know, I think there was a series of about 6 or 7 help sheets, and we also had high visibility posters around our tea rooms, in all the toilets, that were really, again, framing and prompting in interest and making it really visible that menopause is something our organisation cares about and something that should be talked about out in the open. As a funny little anecdote, the initial posters, I hope you don't mind me sharing this,
Not
Thea,
at all.
included an image of an orca whale, because there's this lovely story, and I hope I get this right, about how the postmenopausal whale in the pods in orcas and leads the pack, because she's seen as being knowledgeable, powerful, experienced, but freed from perceived burdens of childhood or those caring responsibilities. So we'd include this orca on our images and posters, and it looked really great. We have a couple of employees who are wildlife photography enthusiasts, and pointed out to us discreetly that we'd actually mistakenly used an image of a male orca in those products, which amused us, and we quickly changed it. There it is. There's sharing some images at the QT when we launched. There's also come and worked with our women's committee at the union to help advise us and educate as well. And we're looking now to how we can, and we've included information in our journals and through our social media, and celebrating World Menopause Day, and commencing that discussion with our wider membership. Because when we go to Education Queensland, which is an incredibly large employer, and we're looking at the working conditions of our teachers, we want to now make sure that we can start the discussion with the education department, how as a really large employer, they can better support the women in the workplace as well, and start with a workforce and a discussion, especially knowing that the Queensland government has a priority around gendered issues. I mean, we don't want our Premier's call for a National Women's Summit to be about nothing. There really is a time and a place, and I feel like there's a momentum at the moment to talk positively about women's experiences. So we look forward to working and pursuing this next level. As new employees start with our organisation, we're looking to make sure that our menopause policy is included in their induction materials, that when our flexible work policy for our employees specifically mentions and discusses menopause, that people know it's an issue that our organisation values very much, and it's framed in a positive way, that we don't have all these negative connotations. I had participants from the initial training approach me and discuss things with me in the hallways and those sort of incidental conversations. And I know at least 5 of my colleagues have had sought medical assistance or health assistance after being involved in the trainings we've offered, and had life-changing positive experiences because they sought that health advice. And they said without the discussion, without the knowledge they gained from the workshops and having these menopausal discussions at work, they wouldn't have done that, and that they were feeling so much better. So that was really great to have that feedback.
That's great. Thank you so much, Penny. And if we've got any hot questions for her, jot it down. For those who've just joined, we'll have a Q&A after the 3 people have spoken. Thank you so much. And yes, of course, you had to share the whale story. And I'd now like to hand over to both Kim Lyon, and I think Scott Laird is here as well.
Yeah, there's Scott's with us.
Fantastic. If you both like to go on camera, that'd be great. And both Kim's the head of people and culture, and Scott is the national director of people and culture with IPG Media Brands. And what I find particularly interesting about your company is, the average age of employees is actually pretty young. So how on earth did you get menopause on the agenda? Love to hear that.
Thanks, Thea. I'm coming from Melbourne, the Kulin Nation, and Scotty is in Sydney.
Yep, from the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation.
So hello, everyone. So I work at, as Thea said, IPG Media Brands. It's the holding company in Australia. We have 700 people. It's a marketing, advertising, communications agency. And Scott works for one of our brands called Initiative. And even if you look at the holding company or in Scott's business, Initiative, we've got a very young workforce. So our average age is 32. and we have 63% of our workforce as women. And today, Scott will talk a little bit more, because I was really passionate about including a male voice as we approach this. And he's certainly an incredible leader when it comes to bringing in culture programs and really sort of championing change. But where I came from it, which I wanted to share, was from a very personal place. And so when I started in the industry at 27, I wasn't in an HR role, I worked in media. And I looked into the future of advertising and media, and I thought, I can't see women that are, you know, even maybe in their mid-30s, you barely saw a mum. And I'm now 50, and I'm pleased to say that I'm seeing, and we're seeing so many women have their families and have their careers well into their, so well beyond their 30s into their 40s. So in the last 5 years, I started to experience quite strong perimenopausal symptoms. So when I met Thea on a RE workshop, I got a massive education. I didn't realize what I was experiencing was menopausal. And I thought, oh, if I feel like I'm a fairly educated person and I work in HR, how can I champion this if I'm experiencing this? And I look across our 32 people over 40 who are women. If I look at that, surely they might experience it too. So really where we came to launch this was, it might not serve us now, but we really hope it serves the women, the hundreds of women that are underneath my age group and are more Scott's age, you know. So, and we think it's so important that we launch and advocate for women generally in our industry, because advertising can and historically has been fairly dominated by men. It's changing certainly now. So who Scott reports to is a female CEO. But more so, we don't have age in our industry. So how do we start advocating for age? So what Scott and I did was we first qualified with Thea to learn how to sort of, you know, what the vernacular, what the messaging was, how managers might experience this, and how it means for workplace and what our purpose was. And we decided it was a dual well-being message as well as sort of a duty. So we didn't want it to be any sort of discriminatory activity towards women experiencing this, because, you know, we compared it to how much we've done work on mental health, which Scott's really championed. If we've done that well, then this is similar territory that we want to make sure people are supported on. But because there's not many women who've experienced it, we don't talk about it. I was learning about it myself. I actually felt quite intimidated about raising it with my CEO. So I report directly into the CEO of Media Brands Australia. And I spoke to Thea multiple times. Like I would ring Thea, okay, let's talk purpose again. Can we, you know, where's this going, you know? And I felt like I was putting myself out there, which in my job, I don't have to do very often. I try and think very organisationally. And so I just want to acknowledge how terrific Thea's been in the consultation for us. And in the end, I was all prepared to go and speak to Mark, and then all this work from home happened. And one day I just thought, I'm going to just warm him up. I realised actually he was a new CEO, which Thea might have sort of shared in some other correspondence. But as I was getting to know him while we were working remotely, I thought I recognised he's a bit of a sort of lots of information over time is where I'm going to get some traction. So I decided to write to him and just ask for Scott, myself, and another person in our team to be qualified and why this was important. And he wrote back immediately and just said, totally back this, think this is a brilliant initiative. So the fear that I had around a man who's a similar age to me, I was thinking surely his wife's experiencing something like this. You know, I just kept thinking of him as a person. But I just created a strong enough business case for it, and he was terrific. So I might let Scott talk actually about where we've got to, because I hope that was sort of enough time for now. It's enough information for now. Scotty?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to acknowledge again, Kim, for leading this for us internally. I know it's not an easy conversation to start and to bring this forward. from my own perspective, when Kim reached out to me and said, I want you to come on this course with me and learn a bit about menopause, it was probably the furthest thing from my radar at that stage. So, but it was an incredibly eye-opening experience to kind of go through that, because to Kim's point, you know, we're very good as an organization. We talk about being progressive in how we support mental well-being and mental health, and even surface level policies. But when we do start to think about the full life cycle, there's some conversations we just weren't having as organizations. And this was certainly one of them. And, you know, I had multiple aha moments in the program with Thea, and just learning about things I had no idea about and the impact, but also how individual and personalized the perimenopause and menopause journeys are, was incredibly important for me to understand. And I think Kim summed it up well, in the sense that you look at our organizational profile right now and you say that it's not a huge impact in terms of volume, but again, we talk a lot about not where we are now, but where we want to be, and making sure we have the right policies and guides to help us as an organisation get there. The area that we're at, and it was really great to hear, Penny, you share a lot of your story, and you're certainly ahead of where we are in the stage, and great to hear how that's progressed. You know, we went through this September of last year into the training program. We've been rolling through a bit of a process at the moment where we've been focusing on two things really. One's the policy. So making sure we have the right structures and standards that exist within our policy documentation, which we can broadly share across the organisation and begin to use that as an educational tool. And the second thing we've been working on is building community. You know, and community's been really important for us, because as Kim mentioned, we don't have a large community that would be experiencing at the age to experience this at the moment, but the community that exists, because these conversations don't happen at work, it's incredibly important to connect these individuals together to at least share their experiences and to normalize that experience. And ultimately, we're going to be working with that community as best we can to look at the next stage of this process for us, which is how do we make sure we build wider conversations across the organisation? How do we connect it better into the other programs that we have? And beyond that, we exist in a really interesting space in our organisations. We work in a media agency. We have fantastic partners that have great voices. So we see our maturity and our responsibility sometimes, which is how do we have these conversations with people who have much larger voices and across larger scale and broader areas of culture and community. So they're the areas that we're exploring at the moment. But from an individual point of view, it's been such a valuable journey for me. It's, you know, I've just had my second child. So again, we're not thinking about menopause right now, but I know it's something that my partner will go through, that multiple leaders in my business will go through, and the better investment and foundation we can put into these areas right now, the more hope we have for Kim's reflection. My wife works in this industry. I'd love for her to look forward and say, I can see a career for myself in this space. And I don't want our young female leaders to look up and go, if you can't see yourself in your future, then there's no future for you there. So there's very much a longer term strategic piece for us in this as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Scott. And I know in working with IPG, it's really helped me change my gendered assumptions about who's going to be receptive and who isn't. I mean, look how the CEO responded, you know, look how Scott's talking. So yeah, that's been really refreshing for me. So thanks so much. And I love how as you're taking the longer term view and helping to educate women before they get to menopause, which is one of the glaring gaps. Yeah. Fantastic.
And I just want to add one thing in, because of our young age of our workforce, we have had women, unfortunately, who have experienced cancer treatment. So they have been so grateful that we've included this, and we've changed the policy language around that too. And I'm proud to say that we're now at a point working across the executive team where we can say the word menopause without everyone thinking, well, what was that?
Wow, that's a milestone.
Yeah, we're starting to feel really sort of getting into the rhythm. So thanks, Thea.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Fantastic. Thanks so much. Jot down any questions. And then over to Julie Stafford, who's coming to us from New Zealand today, University of Canterbury. And she's an operations and project manager there. And love to hand over to you, Julie. And I really wanted to hear from them because they're in the very early stages of thinking through all the issues. So I'd love to hear what you're coming up against, sure, and also the reception you're getting.
Thanks, Thea. Hello, everybody. We're from Christchurch, beautiful sunny day outside. I am actually from England, Newcastle. This is not a dodgy Kiwi accent. I just thought I'd clarify that. So we are just, as Thea's indicated, on the start of our journey. We started in December, just before the Christmas break. The reason was probably me. I went through, as Thea said in the intro, a horrendous year last year, not knowing what was going on with me. I had terrible psychological issues with anxiety, fear, heart palpitations. I just did not know what was going on. Nobody's talked to me about this before. Nobody, you hear about the hot flushes, you hear about other sides of more physical aspects, but nobody explains that this can happen. So I've always had a real passion for well-being. Yes, I'm an operations manager role now. I was 20 years HR manager at the college as well, so I have come from an HR background. So I basically tackled 6 of my colleagues around the university who've got a great passion for well-being. They've been in other projects with me. And we were inspired by an article just in our local newspaper, which was very timely when we were starting this, about a lady, CEO of a bank, who had stepped down from her role with a lot of the psychological issues of menopause. She didn't realize, she thought she was entering early dementia, and stepped down from a very high-flying job. And her story was very real to us. There was also then a following piece by a well-known endocrinologist in Christchurch, again highlighting, as New Zealand, we're very behind the 8 ball on this subject. Australia, UK, so far ahead of us in this area, and given that this country was the first to give women the vote, that just doesn't feel quite right. So yeah, we started from that base. I had a quick chat with the HR director, and she was very much on board. So over the Christmas break, we all did a bit of reading, a bit of research, and came back together and found a number of different research items that we wanted to pull together. So what we're intending to do, as I say, we're in the start of the journey. We're developing a guideline framework policy like yourselves, Kim and Scott. We're doing a website, resources, a discussion guide for managers. We've got just under 900 female staff at the University of Canterbury, and just under 240 are actually in the age bracket of 44 to 55. So we do have a large percentage of women that could be in that approaching menopause bracket. So we felt that we really wanted to make a difference, and set up those resources. We're launching hopefully in October, so World Menopause Day, 18th of October. We're going to launch that week with hopefully a number of promotional materials. We have got an endocrinologist coming to give a seminar on campus, which is brilliant that week. But it is a journey. We've come across some barriers. We've tried really hard to get a male involved in the project, just again, because we thought it'd be really helpful. And we've really struggled. We have a lot of male managers at the university. So, this is going to be a journey that we're going to have to do a lot of education on. But just we touched base with about 400 of our administration / general staff team, and said, hey, look, this is what we're doing, rolling out. If you've got any suggestions, feedback, comments, we'd love to hear from you. And we were just blown away by some of the positive comments that came back, just saying, this is amazing, thank you so much, it's inspiring. And it really just gave us that real impetus just to keep on going and keep pressing this forward, because we know we are going to make a difference to quite a few people's lives through it. So it's an interesting journey.
Great. I love what you shared about when you did check in with staff, despite all your fears and all the closet silence around the topic. Once you open the door, you can actually open a floodgate, hey?
Absolutely. We've got a lot of different cultures here at the university, and we've had a few pushbacks about some cultures are sensitive to this issue. But I think Penny made half the world's population, it's a biological natural process, are going to go through this. So is that our concern or their concern if they find it a sensitive issue? And I think they have a choice not to read it, but I think we do need to push it out to everybody. Everybody's got a right to hear about it.
Yeah.
And
have you had any thoughts about engaging men, or that's you're just still kind of pondering that one at the moment?
We've gone to all our health and safety committees throughout the university trying to bring somebody on board without much success so far. But we will get there at some point. But as I say, the 6 of us working pan university, which I think is really important. It's we're all from different areas, so we've all got our channels in our network. So hopefully making a difference that way as well.
Yeah, that sounds great, having that broad representation. Fantastic. Well, thank you, all of you. And now, it's a bit of a free-for-all for another, 10 minutes or so. If anyone has a burning question, look, I'm going to see if we can self-regulate and if this is going to work or not. If you've got a question, just unmute your microphone. I'm trying to find the hands up button. If people got a hands up button, in the absence of that, just unmute your microphone and we'll see how we go. If you'd like to be the first person. And just while you're pondering that, I'd like to acknowledge Lynn Pearson has just joined us late. And I want to acknowledge Lynn because she's from Wesley Mission, Queensland. And I don't know if you know this, Lynn, but you were actually the very first organisation that got me to do training with your very senior team. So I really want to acknowledge your openness towards that. And it was great to actually come in at that level, influencing some of the leaders so because they can have a trickle down effect. Thanks, Natalie, for saying the hands up button is in the reaction section at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Thanks. Yeah, go.
Sorry, Thea. No, I just wanted, I did come in late. I didn't catch that lady's name, but we were really fortunate to have both our 2 male executives, 2 male leaders who are in the executive board who had wives who were menopausal, who were going through that, and that's how we got them on board. It was just fortunate that they happened to be experiencing that in a personal level, and then were really on board with it at work because of that.
Yes. So
I thought that could help.
A funny story though, Lynn, I remember, I think you might have fed it back to me or something, that one of the guys was hard to get along and he's going, oh, I've got to deal with this at home and now I'm going to deal with it at work.
So, yeah, it was definitely one of our finance executives, and yes, it was. I was really surprised to have him jump on board with the whole thing, but because it was a personal experience with him, he had a better understanding and a better empathy for the situation.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Lynn. Anyone have some questions? Now's your time. Yeah, Inbar, please go ahead, unmute speak up.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm wondering about where the resistance is coming from, where you've encountered it, and of course, very curious to hear about some tactics to deal with that.
Would anyone on the panel like to jump in there?
I'm happy to respond to that. We had, like I said, I had some resistance from women and postmenopausal and menopausal women who thought, because I guess their experiences to date had been that people always saw menopause as negative, that they thought somehow there was something sinister behind the motivation. And that really surprised me. I was lucky enough not to have resistance from our internal management. But when I started broaching the idea about menopause support with Education Queensland, and it was a very male-heavy management team I was talking to, I could see them shifting in their seats, looking very uncomfortable, going, oh my God, this woman's talking to us about lady things or, unspoken things. So I saw that, but they also maintained a public face that they knew they weren't meant to react like that as well. So there's this little part of me as a feminist who has lobbied and advocated for a lot of things in my professional life that, if I'm really honest, I quite enjoy making some male managers uncomfortable and talking about things that need to be said. I'm sort of very unashamedly feminist and will speak out on those things, and I'm really lucky that my job gives me the capacity and the authority to do those things at times, but I recognize not everyone does, and it's not always easy to broach those topics in the workplace. But I think the comments that Kim and Scott made about that drip feeding approach, that normalizing it, the sharing of other people's experiences. When I took the idea to our senior management, I took experiences that Thea and reference materials Thea had given me about unions in the United Kingdom and the work they were doing. So it's almost leveraging off, look, these other organisations are ahead of us. They're doing this. We should be doing it too. And I guess, appealing to that need to wanting to be a good employer, wanting to keep up. Here's the next important thing, we need to get on this.
Just following up on that, Penny, we're exactly the same. The fact that we had in writing that New Zealand was behind the 8 ball, and going to management and saying, look, UC needs to be ahead of the game here. We say we're a really good employer. We've got some great benefits. We've just released a new well-being strategy. We've talked about being inclusive in our overall strategy, but we were still missing out half the population of our staff who are going through something really that could be small, or it could be massively traumatic. The problem is everybody goes through menopause differently. And I was very lucky. I had a female manager, a pro vice chancellor, who'd gone through menopause. So she understood it, but she hadn't had the psychological impacts I had. So she was supportive, but she couldn't understand exactly what I was going through and how I was impacted. So I think we've all got stories to tell. I think the more stories we do tell and raise that profile, it's not a taboo subject. We can't be ashamed of it. And I think I'm laughing. I work in engineering. All my senior leadership, apart from my pro vice chancellor, is male. But I regularly give them an update on where I'm at with this menopause policy across UC. And similar to Penny, there's lots of shifting of uncomfortable people. But I think, again, just the more they get exposed to it and more hear about it, it's gonna start breaking down those barriers.
Great. And just to chip in there, I think sometimes the resistance comes surprisingly from women themselves, and often the ones who haven't had the symptoms, so they don't know what are you complaining about, or they're scared that this is going to make things worse for women because it can trigger or draw out gendered ageism. And then just Lynn's comment about, some cultures just aren't comfortable talking about this. So that's why I think it's really important to continually give the message, no woman is going to be forced to talk about this if they don't want to. We're not going to put individuals in the spotlight, but these are the resources available if anyone wants to. Yeah. And in terms of that discomfort in men, I just think we have to anticipate that and allow. My partner, his background is a hippie, we're all very friendly about bodies and everything. And the first time I said to him about menopause, his eyes went all weird, and it's kind of as if he went a bit pale for a while or something. We haven't known much about it. We've been uncomfortable with it, of course, and men haven't been brought into the conversation. So I think allowing a little bit of time and space for that is a good way to go. Anyone else like to pop their hand up? If not, some people like talking in smaller groups. I'm very aware of that. Okay. I just thought I'd share the poll with you before we go, and a few other little things before we go into the breakout rooms, because I was curious to know what got people here today. So you can see that the majority are in that just curious, thinking about it stage. And that makes a lot of sense to me. There's still a lot of awareness raising to go. And then some are in the planning and implementing stage, and then some in the other. If you're in the other category, do jot something in the chat box. We'd love to hear that. So what we're going to do shortly is to go into some breakout rooms so you can work on wherever you're at the moment. But I just wanted to share a little bit of information about what is out there already, if you do need help, and I guess where I've got to with my own work. And this will only take about two or three minutes. I'm going to go back here. Just give me a moment there. Thank you, Penny and the Whale. So I guess the first thing that I developed was training for managers. And the reason I did that was when I spoke to women in one-on-one confidential interviews, and I said, what do you want? A lot of them said, I just want my workplace to know this is a real thing. We're not making it up. And for them to feel comfortable talking about it if I do need to speak up. And this has also been borne out by international research as well. So there's the training for managers, which can be either self-paced online or face-to-face. I'm hanging out for some more face-to-face, that's for sure. So that's kind of a very central piece. Some people like, say, IPG, just put a few key people through that training first, and then they become a bit of a think tank to then think about, okay, what now? What's the best way to embed this in our organisation, and may not put more people through it later. Prior to implementing the training, there can also be realising there's a need for kind of like a bit of an organisational consulting piece. How do you prepare the ground? Getting the senior executive on team, reviewing the policies, looking at what reasonable adjustments are we going to sanction, and also where are the opportunities to embed this into what we've already got, because you might not need a separate menopause initiative. Then Also, in response to what women said they wanted, I created a program for individual women. So women from different workplaces can come together to get some support. And that's because I think no matter how friendly your workplace, there's probably always going to be some women who just don't want to talk about at work. And I think that's fine. And this is very much about helping women stay connected during this life stage so they don't feel so isolated, which is a key thing. And also to help them maintain their confidence. Erosion of confidence is also a big risk during this life stage. And I bring other people into the program here. I've got some fantastic, I'm calling my guest elders, because women also said, wouldn't it be nice if we had more intergenerational connection with older women who've been through menopause and they're still working. So I've got people like Dr. Nicola Gates, who's a clinical neuropsychologist, to help us understand what's happening here, and some other fantastic women in that program. Hoping to run that again in June, depending on demand. Then, of course, one of the other things women said they want, so can you just help us find good information? There's so much out there. Also, women at this life stage are very busy. So this is a really easy thing that workplaces can do, make access to good information easier. But the kind of education, and this is all kind of developed over time, could just be developing the business case that can be presented to the senior executive. There's the education for all staff that Penny mentioned, for all staff, but then also for women to really zoom in on how am I going to deal with hot flushes in the workplace? What am I going to do on a really brain foggy day? And then a suite of resources, which may turn into a resource hub. I'm not sure yet. Then in terms of some free resources, if you want to go to fear.com.au menopause, there's just a simple one-pager that kind of will help you think about how to talk about it with your boss. There's also a tip sheet on reducing the stigma, because menopause is a bit like mental health. We've got to reduce the stigma first before people will want to talk about it. And then the last one is a copy of the report of the interviews I have done with women, where those standout themes of silence, secrecy, being scared of being discriminated about came out really strongly. Another really good set of resources was developed by Monash University, menopauseatwork.org, and they've got some really helpful templates there just to help you step through how you're going to position this in your organisation, right through to, tips for managers. And I use some of these, they're open source resources in the training that I do, just to not reinvent the wheel, but also to bring them to life. Okay, so as I said, what I'd like to do now is just with a pen and paper, just take a moment and stop and think, for you in either your professional development or your workplace, what's the next step? So for some of you, it might just be, I want to learn more. For others, it could be, okay, I want to work out how better to engage men. For others, it could be, I'm not quite sure how to sell the business case. And from your next step, or the next step you think you need to do, can you define a question or a problem that you'd like to take into your breakout rooms? Because then you can kind of crowdsource all the other brains in that room. So if you just take a little moment now, see if you can define a question or a problem, and maybe related to the next step in your organisation. And then in just a moment, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. It's going to be random. I'm going to give you a good 10 to 15, hopefully 15 minutes, which will take us close to 1, and then we'll have the 15 minutes for debriefing. And I'm thinking, I'm just working out how many groups I'm going to have here. So 30 people have signed up. I think I might even just keep it to 3 people per room, so everyone's got time to talk. When you do get into your room, to make the best use of time, maybe just briefly introduce yourself in a line and state your question. Let everyone do that. And then you'll have to self-regulate to work out, okay, was there a common question that we can all talk about, or the order in which you'd like to talk about those issues? That's just a suggestion to help make the best use of time. Does that sound okay? So shortly, I'm going to press the breakout room